The next morning, Roy's mother offered to drop him at the bus on her way to yoga class. Roy said no thanks. The rain had finally let up and he felt like walking. A fresh breeze was blowing in off the bay, and the tangy salt air tasted good. Seagulls circled overhead, while two ospreys piped at each other on a nest on top of a concrete utility pole. On the ground at the base of the pole were the bleached fragments of mullet skeletons that had been picked clean and discarded by the birds. Roy paused to study the fish bones. Then he stepped back and peered up at the ospreys, whose heads were barely visible over the scraggle of the nest. He could tell that one was larger than the other. A mother, probably, teaching her fledglings how to hunt. In Montana, ospreys lived in the cottonwoods all along the big rivers, where they dived on trout and whitefish. Roy had been pleasantly surprised to find that Florida had ospreys too. It was remarkable that the same species of bird was able to thrive in two places so far apart and so completely different. If they can do it, Roy thought, maybe I can too. He hung around watching the nest for so long that he almost missed the school bus. He had to jog the last block to get there before it pulled away, and he was the last aboard. The other kids grew strangely quiet as Roy made his way down the aisle. When he sat down, the girl in the window seat quickly stood up and moved to another row. Roy got a bad feeling, but he didn't want to turn around to see if he was right. He hunkered down to pretend to read his comic book. He heard kids whispering seat behind him, followed by a hasty gathering of books and backpacks. In a flash they were gone, and Roy sensed a larger presence, skulking. "Hi, Dana," he said, twisting slowly in the seat. "Hey, cowgirl." After a week, Dana Matherson's nose was still slightly purple and puffy, though it definitely wasn't protruding from the center of his forehead, as Garrett had claimed. The only thing startling about Dana's appearance was a fat, scabrous upper lip that hadn't been that way when Roy dropped off the letter at Dana's front door. Roy wondered if Dana's mother had popped him in the kisser. The new injury endowed the big oaf with a disconcerting lip. You and me got some business to settle, Eberhard." "What business?" Roy said. "I gave you an apology. That makes us even." Dana clamped a moist, ham-sized fist over Roy's face. "We're a long way from even, you and me." Roy couldn't speak because his mouth was covered. Not that he had much to say. He glared out from between Dana's pudgy fingers, which reeked of cigarettes. "You're going to be sorry you ever messed with me," Dana growled. "I'm going to be your worst nightmare." The school bus rolled to a sudden halt. Dana quickly let go of Roy's face and folded his hands primly, in case the driver was looking in the mirror. 3 kids from Roy's grade got on the bus and, upon spotting Dana, wisely scrambled for seats up front. As soon as the bus started moving, Dana again grabbed for Roy, who calmly slapped his arm away. Dana rocked back, staring at him in disbelief. "Did you even read the letter?" Roy said. "Everything will be cool as long as you leave me alone." "Did you just hit me? Did you hit my arm?" "So sue me," Roy said. Dana's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "I say you need your hearing checked, partner, along with your IQ." Now, Roy wasn't sure what possessed him to wise off such a violent kid. He didn't particularly enjoy getting roughed up, but the alternative was to cower and beg, which he couldn't lower himself to do. Every time the Eberhards moved from one town to another, Roy encountered a whole new set of bullies and goons. He considered himself an expert in the breed. If he stood his ground, they usually backed down and looked for someone else to hassle. Insulting them, however, could be risky. Roy noticed a couple of Dana's meathead pals watching the scene from the back of the bus. That meant Dana would feel obligated to demonstrate what a tough hombre he was. "Hit me," said Roy. "What? Go ahead, get out of your system." "You're a nutcase, Everhart. And you're as dumb as a bucket of mud, Matherson." That one did the trick. Dana lunged across the seat and whacked Roy on the side of the head. After straightening himself, Roy said, "There, feel better now?" "Damn right I do," Dana exclaimed. "Good." Roy turned around and opened his comic book. Dana smacked him again. Roy toppled sideways in the seat. Dana laughed cruelly and shouted something to his buddies. Roy sat up right away. His head really hurt, but he didn't want anyone to know. Nonchalantly, he picked his comic book off the floor and placed it in his lap. This time, Dana hit him with the other hand, equally fat and damp. As Roy went down, he let out an involuntary cry, which was drowned by the loud, gaseous hissing of bus brakes. For one hopeful moment, Roy thought the driver had seen what was happening and was pulling off the road to intervene. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The driver was as oblivious to Dana's bad behavior as ever. The school bus had merely arrived at the next stop. While another line of kids boarded, Dana composed himself as if he were a model citizen. Roy looked down, fixing his eyes on his comic book. He knew the assault would come as soon as the bus got rolling, and he braced grimly for Dana's next blow. But it never came. For blocks and blocks, Roy sat as rigid as a fence post, waiting to be knocked down once more. Finally, his curiosity got the best of him and he picked over his left shoulder. Roy could hardly believe it. Dana was slumped silently against the window. The dumb goon's fun had been spoiled by one of the kids from the last bus stop, who had been brave enough to sit right next to him. "What are you staring at?" the newcomer snapped at Roy. Despite his pounding headache, Roy had to smile. "Hi, Beatrice," he said.